So I just wrote out by hand the entire first chapter of the book of Genesis, Genesis chapter 1, including day 7, which I'll get to. But I'm just going to read it. And that's all this video is. I'm just going to read my handwritten Genesis chapter 1. The translation that I copied this from, I literally just copied and pasted it by hand, basically. The translation that I copied this from is a translation that Tim Mackey himself did as an exercise at the beginning of a classroom that he taught on heaven and earth. I highly recommend it. The translation itself I'll link down below, as well as the classroom itself. It's completely free. Tim Mackey's a PhD. It's like graduate level classes, completely free, because Bible Project is a nonprofit, and I highly recommend them. Cannot recommend them enough. But that's the translation that I copied this off of, and so there's going to be a few things you're like, wait, that's not what my translation says, and that's because this is kind of his own very literal translation. And so yeah, a few pointers. The word Elohim, whenever you'll hear me say that, that's how it's translated here. Elohim is the Hebrew word for God. God meaning just like the title God. And it's not Yahweh. It's not like the main character God of the Bible necessarily. It's just the general title God. That's Elohim. And I think that's about it. Everything else it's all in there. It's just a much more literal translation. And so here we go. In the beginning, Elohim created the skies and the land. Now the land was wild and waste, and darkness was over the face of the watery deep. But the wind/breath of Elohim was hovering over the face of the waters. And Elohim said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And Elohim saw that the light was good. And Elohim separated the light from the darkness. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning, one day. And Elohim said, "Let there be a dome in the middle of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And Elohim made the dome, and separated the waters which were below the dome from the waters which were above the dome. And it was so. And Elohim called the dome skies, and there was evening and there was morning, a second day. And Elohim said, "Let the waters below the skies be gathered into one place, and let the dry ground be seen." And it was so. And Elohim called the dry ground land, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. And Elohim said, "Let the land sprout vegetation, vegetable plants that produce seed, fruit trees that make fruit according to its kind, which has its seed inside it, upon the land." And it was so. And the land brought out vegetative plants that produce seed according to its kind, and trees that make fruit, which has its seed in it, according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, a third day. And Elohim said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the skies to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, that is for sacred feasts, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the dome of the skies, to give light on the earth, to give light on the land." And it was so. And Elohim made the two great lights, the great light to rule the day, and the small light to rule the night, and also the stars. And Elohim placed them in the dome of the skies to give light on the land, and to rule the day and the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. And Elohim said, "Let the waters swarm with a swarm of living creatures, and let birds fly above the land against the dome of the skies." And Elohim created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every bird of wing after its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the land." And there was evening and there was morning, a fifth day. And Elohim said, "Let the land bring out living creatures according to their kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the land according to their kind." And it was so. And Elohim made the beasts of the land according to their kind, cattle according to their kind, and the creepers of the ground according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim said, "Let us make human in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the land, and over every creeper that creeps on the land. And Elohim created human in his image. In the image of Elohim he created him. Male and female he created them. And Elohim blessed them. And Elohim said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the land and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over every living creature that creeps on the land. And Elohim said, Behold, I have given you every plant producing seed that is on the face of all the land, and every tree which has fruit producing seed. It shall be for food for y'all. And for every beast of the land, and for every bird of the sky, and for everything that moves on the land, which has living being in it, every green plant is for food. And it was so. And Elohim saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, a sixth day. And they were completed, the skies and the land and all their hosts. And Elohim completed on the seventh day his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day, and set it apart as holy, because on it he rested from all his work which Elohim created to make. Genesis chapter 1 and day 7, which bleeds into chapter 2. But saying Elohim is not like, that was my first time actually, I think, really reading the whole chapter through saying the word Elohim. That's what's written there in Hebrew. Like, we think in English we have the word God, and we use it in two ways. We use God, capital G, to refer to like the main character God, like the one true God, I guess, and then lowercase g to refer to like everybody else, you know? And so that's how we use that in English. And so I'm not sure that that's super helpful, but I think because again, we have all these ideas in our heads of what God is and what God means, but trying to reshape our categories to understand the Bible on its own terms and understand what it's saying instead of imposing onto it what we think it says. Just because, like, you're going to do that inherently because it's a cross-cultural experience, you know? We're traveling back in time to a different culture. And so they're understanding things differently. The way they use their words, it's not the things that we mean when we use the same words, because we're inheriting a long history and a long tradition of understanding this story. And so Elohim, category, it's a category of being. I'll leave a link down below and up here to more on that. But yeah, I just wrote out the whole first chapter of the Bible. It's an awesome chapter. There's so much going on here. Also, P.S. I did skip a verse I did skip a line when I was copying this down. And like, if you want to learn more about the tradition of actually writing the Bible and like having it being passed down through millennia, literally, like, first of all, just try writing it out. And then also I'll leave some links down below for the history of the making of the Bible, which is fascinating. But yeah, so like literally sometimes you'll just like skip a line, and then the scribes, you can see them, they'll just like write it out in the margins like they're freaking in school and they ran out of paper. That's literally what they'll do. And it's freaking hilarious. You can see it in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's really funny. So anyways, links to all that below, and start to a long journey.